Gotta say welcome, Mark. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, welcome to Walkie Talkie.
Okay.
Boom, back in the room. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, whichever it is. Welcome to episode 4 of Walkie Talkie podcast. And today we have a special guest, Michaela Davis
Atkins. Newly married. About 18 months.
18 months, yeah. Well, newly married myself. So,
yes,
congratulations.
of course. Congratulations. Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers on that.
Cheers.
How's that gone so far?
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Oh, we knew as soon as we met, really. So it, for us, was just a celebration and a confirmation. And yeah, I wouldn't want to tread this curious world with anyone else.
Yeah.
So
No, I can 100% relate with that. Yeah. So me and
he's the yin to my yang, I think.
Yeah.
The calm and I'm the chaos.
It's funny. I can definitely relate. And when Jodie's watching this, she'll be laughing straight away, thinking I can relate 100%.
She's the calm.
She's definitely the calm. Yeah, and she's the one that keeps me. I'd like to say grounded, but it must be like trying to fight a hot air balloon with a piece of fishing line because. I just want to fly. But yeah, she keeps me on the straight and narrow. She keeps me, as you can see when you've entered the warehouse. You can imagine at home is nothing like the warehouse. I normally, if I put something down, within 2 minutes it's moved. And yeah. And as I'm more recently finding out, I think not wanting to give it a name, but I think more and more it's definitely looked like it's a lot of ADHD traits and tendencies that I've got. So.
Oh, me too.
Is that
and
right?
And I don't want to be one of those people that's like chasing a diagnosis or want to wear a badge or anything like that.
It's nice to have an excuse, though, isn't it?
Well, I think for me, like I used to be a teacher and I used to teach students with ADHD. Never once did I look in the mirror and think that I identified with them, I had an empathy with them because I had similar traits. Or maybe I thought I did empathise because I had similar traits, but not to that degree.
And not knowingly either.
Yes. So, yes, I know there are people that are, especially mature ladies, are now looking for some kind of reasoning, I think, in their world.
Yeah.
And it is something, actually, I've got a bit of an MOT week, and I'm speaking to my GP tomorrow.
Oh, is that right?
And I'm going to run it by her because I make no secret of the fact that I have suffered with my mental health in my, not so many 58 years, but probably 48 or 38.
Yeah.
And so I want to know that, you know, the medication that I'm taking for that, is that relevant to anxiety and depression? Or is it actually, should I be taking something else?
Yeah.
So it's more of an accuracy thing for me
rather
than,
Yeah, it's very similar. From my take on it, is I can't believe I got this far in life and not ever had the thought or realisation that might be, why I'm not, normal as such.
But do you find that it's a private, not normal? Because I am unapologetically myself. I'm very open. I think you're very similar.
Yep.
But when I think of how I've achieved things, I was single parent, was at UEA, had no support from my ex-husband with Zand, my son, and it was really difficult. My late brother went through a real trauma in his life, and I supported him through that, which then ate into my time even more.
Yeah.
And I was 0.5% of getting a 2-1, which for a single parent, that was like a first. And I think back to that now, that 0.5 doesn't matter. But at the time it did. But when I think about what I've achieved, despite
that, and despite not knowing to adapt to that, or to have the correct medication, or to have guidance.
I think I wouldn't say damage that's done, but I think I'm the one that's probably suffered. So I'm the one that has probably been hard on myself because I overthink, because my, the monkey chatter and everything else, imposter syndrome, all those things. But I still get out there and do stuff.
Yeah.
And the beach huts, Bertie and Betty, they're a real sort of testament to that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. It's good.
Put yourself out in the public and fail publicly.
Fail forward. I'm a big believer in that. So I was quite fortunate, like we spoke earlier, in I had fantastic set of parents that never once, and they knew deep down, they always knew not something weren't right, but they knew I was slightly different, and I lost my temper a lot, and I was, a lot of people call it stubbornness and things, but it weren't, and, I'd pick things up. Frustration, and I've been going to the doctors, again, I'm like yourself, I'm quite an open book, and I think you need to be in this day and age. I think it's important to be an open book, because so many people, won't push yourselves forward through fear of being either ridiculed or laughed at, or, people not wanting to be around you, etc. Where I've found in life, if you're unapologetically, like you say, yourself, the right people will find you, and the right people will, in theory, take care of you. Like yourself, with me and Jodie, if I wasn't myself and I tried to hide the fact of, the person I am, then I'd probably end up with someone who wasn't the person for me. And then when it does all come out, they wouldn't understand. And Jodie's quite good at understanding that. Do you know what I mean? She should really be getting carer's allowance for me, I think. But,
I know. Do you know, that totally resonates with me, because Tim and I met online and we chatted away. And funnily enough, although I've had football in my life, all my life, my dad was a fantastic footballer, and my brothers were. My dad ran a team, and then Zand was a fantastic footballer. So I'd always been like a footy mum, and I used to write the reports and do the subs and everything. And then when he walked away from football, I suppose I did. And then, England would play, and I didn't know the faces. I might know the odd name, but, not like the knowledge level that I'd had before. And then Tim and I found ourselves talking about the World Cup, and we were like messaging, and I think England had penalties, and I said, I can't cope with that. I said, I'm going to sign off and go to bed. I said, just message me in the morning with the result. And I think that was my first sort of, if you were, intuitive or perceptive, you might think, like maybe a little bit of anxiety there, or something behind that. Or it might have just been like, I'm not watching it.
Yeah.
And then we met, and we got on really well, and everything was going great. And then I remember inviting a friend around for dinner, and it was just a Sunday roast, and it was my best friend. So what could go wrong? And I started doing the vegetables in the kitchen, and then I obviously wasn't feeling right for whatever reason. And he came through to the lounge, and I said, I can't do this today. And he said, what do you mean? He said, you were fine a moment ago.
Yeah.
I said, I was, but I think I was living through it.
Masking it, yeah.
Yeah. I said, but actually, I can't do this roast lunch today. Even though it's my best friend, I just can't do it.
Too much, yeah.
And he's that was the first time that he saw, like, the fragile side of me, or I could call it fragile, but maybe it's not. It's just another element to me. And I think he was the first man in my life that I showed that side to.
Yeah.
So like you, he's seen all of me.
But then you find a strength.
And so I feel like he loves me for who I actually am, And I'm not going to say warts and all, because I don't see that as a, like my personality as, warts. Yeah. It's just, it's multi-dimensional.
Yeah, definitely.
And he can cope with that.
Yeah.
So.
And I think mentally I would, if you hadn't been in that situation, you would take it that it's quite a scary place to be. Someone knows actually everything about you, like 100%. And I can relate again with Jodie, because she's probably one of the only people, other than my parents probably, and maybe my brother, who have actually seen every single side to me. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think it's a name for the shape of the person I am. No one say round. But yeah, you know, there's so many different sides and elements, but she has seen everyone, and you'd normally feel like, you then don't want to be, you know, you kind of not, because everyone's got parts that they're not the proudest of, and you think you don't want that person to see that side of you. But when they see that side of you and they still love you, then you know that person's the one, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think also as well, you know, when we meet someone, they, you know, if you think of us as a Rubik's Cube, and, you know, we show our favourite colours first, and then our true colours come out, and then depending on how receptive that person is to, like you say, chinks in your armour, or you know, your rich tapestry of life, you know, it's there, it's documented, but she's privileged
to see it,
to see all of you, and you get, I mean, I just met a friend of mine recently, and she was totally duped by somebody, and the marriage lasted 32 days, and he turned out to be a real narcissist, and there was like not 1 ounce of truth in him.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you think that you could meet someone like that, and, you know, I've had my fair share of frogs.
Yeah.
Before I met him. What's the male version of that? Is it like?
It's strange because women seem to use the term "my fair share of frogs." Men seem to use terms that probably not really should be said on.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. I think we'd have to beep it out. Yeah.
Let's go with Fiona from Shrek.
Yeah. But, yeah. So I was actually going to pick up on that and say, obviously, because I run the men's group at Walkie Talk, it's not from a biased perspective, and I'm the first, you know, an advocate to say I don't think, you know, women are the problem, and I don't think men are the problem, you know. But obviously, I get to interact with a hell of a lot more men than I do women on the walks. So from you know the experiences I've had with people, I know that a lot of men have been through, you know, relationships, and how to put this politically correct. Again, a bit like the whole thing of being duped, or, you know, being with someone who wasn't what they thought they were. And I'm sure, you know, if you lined up 100 men, 100 women, probably, in all fairness, you know, I don't put a number on it, but
it's not gender specific.
It's not gender specific, exactly. That's what I was trying to get to. I didn't want people to watch it and think, oh, that's just attacking.
No,
I'm not attacking all men and women. We're all bad.
No.
But
to be honest, I think if you had that sweeping generalising view, you wouldn't be sat here, would you? And neither would I.
No,
because you know, the world is complex, and it's because of those rich experiences that your guys all like knit together and are now discovering that, oh my God, it wasn't just me. You know, and I think sadly it's heightened, isn't it? Because, you know, we don't think that men might be mentally abused or physically abused because it goes against the kind of
alpha male thing.
The caveman, the hunter-gatherer, you know, and so it's, you know, so where do they go with that? You know, they kind of, and then of course, then it's if you are like our personality, and then, you know, you've got that chatter, and then all of a sudden you've created a whole new world based around something that actually, instead of internalising, you actually need to share and
put out to the world.
Yeah, and realise.
Like the Walkie Talkie podcast, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
Just sitting there, I've got an idea. Next thing you know, here we are in the studio.
Yeah.
Recording. Yeah. That's it's cool. But right, let's talk about something a little bit more deeper. Obviously, when I first kind of met yourself, I was on our walks. Let's kick off with that. How did you get Bertie? Tell us a story about Bertie and
Betty. Okay, so Bertie and Betty are a couple of gorgeous beach huts. If you Google them, you'll see that my website is coming shortly, and I might even be doing it myself. That's a bit of a complicated story that we did touch on earlier. Yep. But we're also on Facebook, and I'm at the helm, and they're on Galston Beach. Their doors are crying out to be open today because we've got Wedgwood blue skies out there. and I'll probably go down this afternoon. And the history behind them is quite emotional. So I did think, I've put mascara on today. Should I have done that?
We need to strap in and
Yeah,
get some tissues at the ready.
you should be. You should have a box of tissues.
Yeah, I done it on
for your
purpose
guests.
because I find if it's tissues here, I'll be the first to cry. So, I find if we don't have...
Look, I just use mascara.
Yeah.
So, so I'm one of four and grew up locally. My dad was a docker. My mum, very hardworking. She worked in schools and she did a pop-up B&B. And then my dad would also do taxi in the evening. So they were kind of like, ships in the night, and it just really, working hard to bring us all up. I was born in 66, May 66. So, so I think I just caught the World Cup. And they think it's all over moment. But my brother, Mark, who's now sadly my late brother, he was born 10 months before me. So I didn't fully appreciate that gap in, to have two babies that close until I had my son when I was 29. And then when he was 10 months thinking, oh my gosh, I can't even begin to imagine not just the physicalities of having a baby, but also just the juggling and everything. Yeah. And, and I also thought to myself, Dad, you should have given my mum a choice.
Yeah.
I shouldn't blame him. They're both upstairs now in heaven. So, but I would have said it if he was sat in front of me anyway. So, so we grew up really close. We were like salt and pepper. My mum used to knit, which I've now got the passion for. And so on the knitting patterns, he would have the jumper, and I would have the cardigan. She'd knit our school uniform.
Is that right? Yeah.
And we used to have our bikes from the Acle Sale. He had a little blue RSW 14 and I had a red one, and until such times as he went onto the chopper and I had the shopper. Yeah. So we were very close. And also my nanny, so that's my dad's mum, she was a single parent, sort of like during the war. Very rich story there. But so she just had my dad, and Mark and I used to go and spend the weekends with her. He'd drop us off tea time on a Friday, and so we'd spend all weekend together. So we would just, I know they call them Irish twins if they're not actually on the same day, but if you're within the 12 months, that's what they, I didn't even know that till quite recently.
Just learned something new myself.
Yeah. So we were very, very close, kind of came as a package, if you like, until we started to grow up. And then he was more country and motorbikes, and I was more city and, going out with the girls and sort of more soul and Case to Soul weekend, that kind of thing. Yep. So our tastes were very different. And then obviously we spent, our lives going in different directions, but always very, very close. And then he had a motorcycle accident on May the 4th, which obviously is Star Wars Day, on the way to Norwich. And it was a young guy. It was completely his fault, and took my brother off his bike. And thankfully, a paramedic was the first person to the scene who did a tourniquet, but sadly lost his leg below the knee. And then, and it was around the time where I was flying out to Jamaica for my 50th and Zand 21st, because we share the same birthday. And he was like, you can't do anything here. I insist you go and have your celebration. I'll be here. This is going to be a long job. Anyway, when we were in Jamaica, because he loved Bob Marley and, he loved everything Jamaica. To go with Bob Marley. Yeah. The guys that used to come along the beach with the rastas and everything. Yeah. I used to get them to do like little videos and stuff and send them to him. And anyway, when I got back, sadly, the amputation had then gone above the knee. So he was probably like you and I would be. He was emphatic in his recovery, and he went to Headley Court. He did everything. He had one of those, bionic legs. I really should look the name up. and they were fantastic because they're so sensitive to certain terrain. So if depending on what you want, like so say he was a bit older and all he wanted to do was just walk, then they would tailor the leg, the prosthetic to that. But if he wanted to go in water, if he wanted to walk backwards and things, it was incredible. So I went on that journey with him and obviously supported him. And he even looked at, having a motorbike adapted so he could still do track days and things like that. And then about 12 months in, he started to be really unwell and couldn't leave the bathroom. We'd had a little bit of difference of opinion because I was caring for my mum at the time and my brothers weren't helping very much. Well, I didn't know, but he had a genuine reason to not be helping, whereas the other two didn't. And one was really absent in our world anyway. So I went to see him and we were chatting, and then there was this, I know there's a sort of silence, but there was this moment where he said to me, "This is not going to end well, Kaylee." And that was my family name. That was what I was born, Michaela, but my family called me Kaylee. And I said, "What do you mean not going to end well?" And he said, "Well, it's cancer." And I said, "I didn't know." So there was that real kind of like, oh my God.
Realisation moment, yeah.
So then I just went into super, I'm going to help you have, the best experience of this horrible scenario. And then, so I helped him, and I remember him getting cross with me one day because I got all his bills and everything, and I was like highlighting, and he's like, "Oh, you're such a teacher." And I said, "This is my way. This is what I can bring to the table.
This is how I can try and help." Yeah.
And then I helped navigate the medical system with him, which was really difficult. I can't imagine anyone not having someone when the diagnosis is bleak. And anyway, it was esophageal and bowel cancer, so the kind of cancer was meeting in the middle. And they said that it was, it didn't have long, so we then started to look at bucket lists, and I contacted this motorcyclist racer. I don't know his name, but obviously he'd helped me with that. I contacted him and said, "Can we meet you at the TT?" And started, being really proactive about the last months of his life. And then we got news that that bucket list wasn't going to happen, and it was much shorter, and I think we had 10 weeks notice. So I kind of lived at the James Paget. I know I didn't win some friends on the staff there because and one sister, male sister, said to me, some of the nurses do see you as very formidable. And I said, "I'm here for one purpose, my brother." I said, "And I will be his advocate, and if things aren't right, I will speak." And in a way that I've probably never done it for myself.
And you never probably would. If you're in the same situation, it's weird how we can be passionate about. But if anything, that's probably, and you probably haven't thought, it's probably testament to your relationship with your brother.
Yeah.
Because I'm very the same, even with my children. In someone could attack or do something towards me, and you kind of brush it off, or you kind of it's not. But if it was to someone you love, blimey, there's another side of you coming. And I think everyone in general, that's not I everyone's
agree.
like that.
I agree. And sad for those that aren't, really, isn't it? Because so obviously it was a really, really difficult time, and I myself have had breast cancer, so it was that real struggle inside. Why am I here? Why did I survive mine, but you're not surviving yours? And that felt so unfair, just on a kind of very acute personal level. And I remember him texting me saying, "Are you awake?" And it was 4 a.m, and I'm like, "Yeah." I said, 4 o'clock used to be my nemesis, oh my God, my mortality. It doesn't matter whether, you've got all the family, the friends, you've got Macmillan, you've got you know,
Yeah.
your ducks in a row, you haven't got worried financially. It doesn't matter. That 4 a.m. was when, you know, I used to think about not being on the earth.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah. He said, I'm the same. He said, come and get me. And I went and picked him up. And we went down to the James Paget foyer. And he just wanted a drink. And the change machine didn't work. And so we couldn't access a drink. And am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you are on my podcast.
Oh, okay. So he was like, fuck it, let's go to Tesco.
Yeah.
So I took him to Tesco, and because it was 24 hours, and he got in one of those motor scooters, and I kid you not, because, you know, my brother was very frugal, but he wasn't mean. He had a very quite simple relationship with money. He was a high earner. He didn't have his own partner. You know, or children, and so long as where he lived had a garage for his motorbike, and he had a large screen for the, you know, to watch the racing. You know, because I can remember clearing his wardrobe, thinking, well, where's the rest of your clothes? But he had, you know, he had Levi's and he had nice things, but he didn't have an abundance. He had what he needed. So, oh yeah, where was I? I think I've kind of got myself lost a little bit.
Tangent, but
yeah.
So we're talking.
So he then he then passed away in the August, and he left me some money. That's where I was at. Oh, that's right. When we did Tesco, he went round and he said to me, "Oh, I just really want to, you know, spunk my card." And I said, "Well, do it then." And he went. I remember him standing up and getting all the motorbike magazines from the top shelf and chucking them in. And then he got donuts for like the entire ward. And then he got flowers for me and flowers for Mum. And it was a kind of a bit of a last hurrah, but we were in the moment.
But you didn't know it, no.
We didn't really know that.
Not trying to butt him.
It's fine.
When this goes live and out, you'll watch it back. And obviously you'll get to see basically what we see. So you'll see... And quite rightly so, when you're talking about your brother, you can see the connection 100% and how much obviously he meant to you. And you can see the moment where you say, you know, we went to the vending machine and he couldn't put any money in. And straight away I thought to myself, that's one of them moments where you just want to scream. And any other day of the week, it wouldn't matter. You'd be like, oh, there's no change. Because it's 4 a.m, there's no one to get any change from. There's nowhere else you can blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And one of you would have gone, like you said, oh, let's just go to Tesco's, to hell with it. And because as soon as you went to Tesco's, your whole, like... You know, that story sort of pours out of you, but in such a happy, positive way. So that's them moments are meant to be.
I remember driving round where, I know it's not there now, but Pedal Revolution was there. And I remember driving around and I love lime green and I love coral, which is what I'm wearing today. And those are the colours of Bertie and Betty. And that's why they're those colours.
Yeah.
And I saw this lime green bike in the window and it was one of those like retro ones. And I was like, oh my God, look at that beautiful bike. He went, go and get it. And I went, oh, don't be silly. He went, no, I'm serious. I went, look, it's 6 a.m. or whatever it was. I said, I'm not going to go get it now. He went, I want you to go back. He said, I want you to get it. He said, and I want, you know, bells and whistles, whatever you want, just go and get it. And I did. And so anyway, he generously left. Oh, so part of the times that we did that a few times, but it wasn't as crazy as the Tesco thing. And I've still got that on video, which is lovely. But I remember going to the car park near the Pier Hotel, and I remember recording him. And he said, "Can I have a cigarette in your car?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "This." And he said, "Oh, this is really funny." He said, "It's the first time you've ever let me smoke in your car." He said, "And I'm smoking a spliff." So I just said to him, "Well, you know, special circumstances." And we had a laugh and obviously a cry. And he was like, "What are your dreams, Kaylee?" And I said, "Oh my gosh." I said, "You're asking me and my answer matters." You know, we talk about it and sometimes it can be throwaway and the person might say it and the answer might not matter. I said, "But you're asking me and this really matters." And I said, you know, I'd run a Airbnb and I had a little cake business at the time. And I just said to him, "Oh, you know, I just, you know, love to do things like that. Love hospitality." I said, "Really love like to have a beach hut." And that's where Bertie and Betty came from. So he left me some money and it was a little bit controversial because the council initially didn't allow beach hut leases, when they say owners, but you lease,
Lease them,
to hire out. And my dad was a counsellor, my late dad, very enthusiastic about society, and, you know, the man that didn't have the voice, and he was a shop steward, and, you know, you get in the picture.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I'm like, you know, I didn't realise, like you don't realise what qualities that you've got like your parents, but B, that like come out when they need to.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's wrong. I don't want Gorton to be like Southwold, where we all walk past and think, oh, this is a rich town, and Londoners have got a second home, and we're kind of peering through the windows, you know, pressing our noses up, thinking that's a world we'll like never be in.
Yeah, experience.
Unless we win, you know, the lottery or
Lottery or
something
something,
like that. So, and I didn't want that for Galston, and so when they eventually changed the lease to not 25 years but also to 10, and I'd budgeted for the 25, it meant that I could have 2 beach huts, and they said yes because they weren't selling. And Bertie and Betty arrived, and I'd actually broken my ankle at the time, so I couldn't even be down at the beach to see them arrive. And someone said to me, why have you called them Bertie and Betty? And I said, well, someone asked me that, and I said, I'm just going to call them something that kind of, you know, alliteration, rolls off the tongue, Bertie and Betty. Well, it ended up sticking. And I know sometimes, you know, when ladies get pregnant and they have a bump, and they call the bump a name, and then all of a sudden that bump becomes that name, you know, or that little child. So so that's how Bertie and Betty kind of were initially born. And then going back to my childhood, Great Yarmouth girl, and we lived on Beaconsfield Road, and my mum did the guest house in the summer, the pop-up, and we'd all kind of shimmy up and share rooms, and, you know.
When the other one's out.
And my nanny had retired from Dockra's, the rock factory.
Yeah.
We used to get all the rock ends. I used to love it. And so she used to come down from, oh gosh, what's the estate down near the Pleasure Beach?
The barracks?
The barracks. So
Yeah.
she'd get on the bus, number 2 bus, come down. We lived quite close to the bus stop, and she would pick us 4 up. So we were 4 under 6. I was a bit older then, so I would probably been about 8 or 9. And we'd go down and we'd play on the beach every day. Well, my mum did the breakfast, and then we'd come back about 11. So we were like that proverbial, oh, are we there? Yeah. And, oh, this is really heavy. And, you know, can you carry this? And he's got more than me. Or I've got more than him, and whatever. Anyway, I remember that. And I was like, do you know what? These beach huts need to be boutique beach huts. They need to cater for absolutely everything. And that's what we've done. And, you know, we have this sort of, I suppose, this philosophy of just add milk, because we provide tea, coffee, hot chocolate, marshmallow, picnic stuff for 6 guests. There's hot water bottles, there's throws, there's spare towels, there's everything. And, you know, we've all got one of those drawers in the kitchen which you open it and it's like kind of, I suppose, a little bit like your warehouse, but on a miniature scale. And
did you know you can actually buy them, all joking aside, on eBay and places you can buy, and it's more like a gift for people who have just moved into their first homes.
Really?
Like
how interesting.
You can buy them the junk drawer, and it's literally like
the junk drawer, that's what it's
called. It's got spare batteries, a bit of wire, you know, a little bit of thread and needle.
So we've created the junk drawer in Bertie and Betty. I mean, there's poo bags in there for dogs. There's sun cream. There's like personal care for ladies if they get, you know, caught off guard. There's everything, because my feeling is if you make the effort to, you know, synchronize calendars with your family, with your friends, and you book a day, and then physically you get there, you come down the slope, get to the huts, you know, and you're all getting settled. And then you realise something fundamental that you've forgotten, you know, like maybe like a bottle opener or something like that. Okay, it's not going to be the end of the world, and you manage. But you're like, oh, and you know, if you're anything like me, you get cross with the one thing that you've done wrong, not the 6 million things that you've done right.
Yeah.
I think we're all a bit like that. So that's how they arrived, and we're now season 5. So sounds like a box set, doesn't it? But we're now coming into season 5. Bertie and Betty are 4 at the end of this month, and it's had its highs and its lows. They were Marmite to many people because we were the first to hire out. So you had a lot of Galston society that, the community, the Marmite, the love it, the hate it. Are you going out? Are you sitting out too far? And there were lots of complaints, and it was difficult and emotional and frustrating.
People don't like change, do they?
No, they don't. And sometimes you'd think, why don't you just come and speak to me? Especially if it was fellow beach hut owners. And they're like five huts down, and you think, why don't you just come and speak to me? Because actually, everything I'm doing was with a good heart. I got no agenda. There's nothing malicious about what I'm trying to achieve. People fabricate as well. People used to complain to the council and say, she's out of her hut and she's pulling people off the promenade and saying, come and hire. And, and everybody, exactly, it's laughable because everybody knew who heard that would be like,
not really.
But you sell out and you haven't got a marketing campaign.
No.
You've just got your Facebook page. So why would somebody say that? And then it's like, my friend's sister-in-law's brother said, So I found that really, really difficult, and I wasn't prepared because I think when I had my cake business, it was there was a lot more of control.
Yeah.
And also I wasn't a council tenant, which, has been quite an enriching experience itself.
Yes, that's another subject for another podcast.
Yes, for another podcast.
Yeah.
So that's they have been my healing place. They're the place that I feel really close to Mark because when we used to go to my nanny's, we used to go, 1 week we'd be at my nanny's and her sister would come across from Galston. And then the following week, we'd get on the ferry. Can you remember the little old ferry in Galston?
So that was, I don't know when that finished, but that was kind of before my time.
Early 70s, maybe?
So I was born late 70s.
Oh, okay. So maybe mid-70s. I'm sure someone watching might know the date.
And I know I think my mum used to travel every day on it, back and forth.
Yeah, that was a real commute, yeah. So we would get on the ferry on the Saturday morning and go across, and then we'd walk up to my my great-aunt's flat, and we'd stay there. So we would then go to Galston Beach, ice cream. Mark would be at the yacht pond. I'd be in the little paddle pool. I mean, it's lovely that some of those things are still there.
Yeah.
I know in a different way.
Yeah.
But
I can relate because my dad was the last man to own Galston swimming pool.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, before again. I'm quite conscious of the fact this is recorded, so I don't want to go into too much detail. But, then the council decided,
in their wisdom,
that they were going to take it back and run it themselves. And surprisingly, I don't know why it didn't work. So they then decided to turn it into a skating rink and cut the pool in half, and that didn't work. So they decided to restore it back to the park that it is now, which actually I think is still a lovely place.
Oh, it's beautiful. The bandstand.
And when you walk past there, sometimes on our walk, we obviously regularly walk past it every couple of weeks. I think the pavilion put quite a lot of stuff on, and that's great. Do you know what I mean? I'm not, but I can remember, and I got pictures growing up as a child.
I think it was a painful adjustment for a lot of people, wasn't it? Locally. I mean, we were fortunate because my dad had quite a well-paid job with the docks, because he was temporary for many, many years, and so when he'd work on the docks, and then when the work finished, he'd go to the labour exchange and go and get another job, and he used to be like lorry driver for cake companies and all sorts. We used to have all sorts of goodies, and so we were lucky that our family had a season ticket.
Yeah.
And it was like not everybody had one of those, and we used to go like every single day
especially in the summer
to the like the school holidays, and my dad, because obviously the flexibility of his work and shifts and different things, he'd drop us all off. My mum would make a big Tupperware of sandwiches, and you'd just spend all the time in the pool. And then whatever shift he was on, you know, like when the boats would come in and they'd offload them and what have you. And then the best part was when he used to finish work and turn up, and he always used to be like, you know, really silly in the pool and, you know, mess about. And you'd sort of say, oh, watch me, I've learned to dive.
That's
or,
it, yeah,
you know, or
I can jump in.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people have great memories of that place. But I think, you know, we're in a different world now, aren't we, where we've gone PC mad. And so the thought of, I suppose, having a lovely outdoor swimming pool with high boards and everything. And stuff, oh my goodness! You know, it's like where there's blame, there's a claim. It's
you can get away with it. Now I can remember,
you just wouldn't sleep if you had that business, would you?
I can remember I was only really little, you know, maybe 5 or 6 or something. And I can remember me and my brother being there, and it was like just before they'd open in the morning. And obviously all the team will walk around, you know, clean the sides down, getting everything ready, and sunbeds and stuff, and the kiosks getting ready and starting to cook chips and stuff ready for the day. And I remember, or whatever, and I can remember the maintenance, you know, the chap who used to look after the pool would be like, well, you two ain't got to wait, obviously, because my dad was the owner, like, just, you can get in the pool. So we had the whole pool to ourselves.
Oh, that's...
And they used to have in a maintenance room, they were all tractor tyre inner tubes had blown up. So you could never pop them, and so they were blown up all the time, and he'd throw them out, and we'd be in the pool, you know, just us. Like, them memories are just... Yeah,
they're indelible,
and
aren't
again,
they?
you'd never get that nowadays, too, you know, and at the time, you know, looking back, I think there was no lifeguard on at the time, because he weren't on his shift yet, just me and my brother.
Yeah,
like,
it's kind of like a risk assessment nightmare.
Yeah, none of that, But, no, good times. But,
so I've got, you know, big connections with, or deep connections with, like, Galston Beach.
Yeah.
And, I love being down there. When the weather, I mean, on Saturday I went down at 9 because we had some guests in Betty. And I went down at 9. Tim did the park run, so I was, like, cheering him on. And then we had bacon rolls. Zand came down, and then a friend of his joined us, and I saw so many people that I hadn't seen for ages.
Oh, yeah, lovely.
Because I'd been travelling, but also because it's been winter and, you know, you only get the diehards going now. Yeah. But, yeah, so there was like, oh, how are you? And, you know, lovely conversations. And obviously, always love seeing you guys come down. And I always get a hug.
Yeah,
a hug from Liam. He started it off, and then, and then you know, and then the rest of you.
You have to give, what's the dog's name?
Our little dachshund, Mr. Blue,
Mr. Blue,
yeah. Oh, he's now kind of like, you know, adjusting to the fact that, you know, he's got to share the promenade, but he's so funny when we get to the top and I let him off and he'll run and it's almost like his bottom. I think he's going to just like topple over because his, you know, his like
so
little legs are going. But he'll stop at Bertie and Betty, and then he sort of like looks enough to say, are we going to the beach first, or have I got to sit and wait, and then we can go on the beach? So obviously I try and alternate it. But I left there at 4:00 when I lost the sun on my face because I'd moved over, and I was knitting the cushion covers for the beach huts because the other ones were looking a little bit tired, and I like to.
Sounds like an excuse to get knitting again. Like,
well, when I was cruising recently, I was like knitting. So Betty's are almost done, and like I said, she's a warm palette, and Bertie's are cool. So I just looked like this crazy lady in my coat with my cup of tea, knitting away, and people were like going past. But no, I absolutely love it down there.
I find that really good. Even on the walks, you know, with us with the guys, but even when there's a large group of us, if we a typical time, we were out Saturday night. We've done some escape rooms and stuff, and in Norwich, and it was lovely. You know, time out with the lads. We had a really good night, but we didn't really interact with anybody else. Like, whereas when you're at Galston, you know.
Yes, you can kind of like sprig off, don't you?
Yeah, but you just kind of find even people walk towards you. It's that very like, oh, good morning or good afternoon, and people, what are you guys up to? And like, it's quite. Yeah,
I think we are. I think as a community, I think for a lot of people, it's especially after, you know, during and after COVID, it's a lot of people's safe place, isn't it? It's like, Winnie Pooh's thinking spot.
Yeah.
For me, and it doesn't matter what 365.
Yeah.
I love. In fact, I love it as much in the winter as I do in the summer. There's no, I'm not a fair weather girl when it comes to being down there, and I think it's like that for so many people, and I think that's why there is perhaps this resistance to change. It's that protection. It's that.
Don't want to lose the safe space.
And recently we've been in the tabloids, and albeit whether it's paper or online, with the Telegraph and the Mail, talking about how fantastic our beach is, and I always share the article on our Facebook page, and then you get our guests. You're right. They say, "Shh, don't let anyone know." They'll all be coming. So there is that kind of like, I don't know. It's that paradox, isn't it? Of you want it to be a successful little hub, but you want it to be contained into.
You don't want it to be very
quaintness.
It's right.
Yeah. Well, we are. We're Great Yarmouth's quiet cousin, aren't we? With a with a wallflower, and we want to stay that way.
Yeah, very true.
So
no, that's
So we're now looking forward to a season of lots of celebrations. We don't use the word party because
you're not allowed to.
No. It's we're restricted to 6 guests. The council say 8, so I always ask people if it is going to 8. Could you let me know, because then I can guide you through what else you need to bring, because we only cater for 6.
Yeah.
And then we do the twilights as well. So sometimes they'll have both huts, and they'll come at the guests will come at 6. And it goes on to about 9:30. So our lease is dawn till dusk. So depending on the time of the year, that's when the hire ends. And I think one of the lovely, probably one of the most popular feedback comments we get is, it's so nice because we can order food in or bring what we want to drink.
Yep.
Whether it's, a cup of tea, then obviously you don't need to bring that. But if you're going to Prosecco, no secco, whatever you choose. I'm talking about a group of ladies now, but we still need to get you guys down there.
Yep.
And there's no pressure to host. There's no, I've got to get the house straight. The house has got to be perfect. Clean the bathroom. You haven't got to do that. It's just somewhere.
You haven't got to prepare the food. You haven't got to.
No, and we're lucky that we've got, we've got the Fig, we've got Tony's Chip Shop. There's China. Embassy China.
Yeah.
So and then of course you've got like I don't use those, but you've got your Just Eats and stuff, so you can have lots of different foods delivered now. So we are a postcode.
I know what you mean. Yeah. So it's similar to when I moved out to Alton, when we moved from locally Bradwell. I remember saying to Jodie, one of the biggest things I'm worried about is Just Eat's not going to deliver. Do you know what I mean? 'Cause we're out in the sticks.
Yeah.
And randomly, when you go on the app now, I think there's like 120 places that deliver to us. There's probably more there than in Yarmouth. It's proper strange, but it's nice to be on that sort of map where you can.
You're on that network. It's like It's like if you're on the Just Eat network, you're in civilization. It's not about water and electricity now. It's about the Just Eat network.
Yeah, very true.
So we have a lot, and we do, hen gatherings where perhaps. They don't want a crazy wild,
night out,
stereotypical night out.
So and they spend some quality time together.
And maybe they want like 3 generations, which, is great down the huts. And then we've done baby showers as well. So, it is lovely to be, sort of part of somebody's celebration. I mean, this morning I woke up to a thank you message because this lady had organised a 40th surprise for her son. She'd just moved up from Hertfordshire last year.
Yep.
And she was just like so excited and then sent me a lovely thank you message this morning.
That's
nice, so, she, obviously it's a service and they pay, so she hasn't got to say thank you.
No, but it's nice to receive that still.
But, and we'd washed Bertie and Betty, the little teddy bears, and their clothes, and they were still naked in Bertie. So I took them to the little girl, Darcy, who she must have been about 4. And I said to her, would you help me and would you dress the bears for me? So this lady did that with her granddaughter. I was watching them, and I, clicked away a couple
Special
of times,
moment.
and it was just like, oh my gosh, the interaction, they could have been anywhere,
Yeah.
and it was so lovely, and obviously I sent her the images, and because she lives away from them now, really precious, and
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think that's what it is. It's about
Moments.
the connections that you get down there. We get some ladies that say, oh, I'd love to come down, but I'd never get my husband down here. And I said, well, just come for half a day. And then it's like, oh, he didn't want to leave.
Yeah, he really liked Jimmy Book again.
Yeah, it's because it's like the unplug.
Yeah.
We haven't got Wi-Fi down there, obviously purposely. And
No one can find you unless you're down there. It's not like...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I know some guests who book, like, I had a couple that booked for Christmas Day, and they said, we're not telling anyone, because we just want it to ourselves, and they had the fairy lights, and what it looks like down there. So
no, that is...
but yeah, so they are, they are a joy. I like to think, my brother's watching, and
yeah, I'm sure he is,
seeing that,
how successful they are, and
my dreams
come to fruition.
continue to come true.
And in a nice way, he's obviously a part of that, which is
Oh,
lovely.
massively.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
massively.
that is great.
So, it's a great legacy, and, because we all, well, none of us want to leave the earth and not feel like you've had an impact somewhere.
No, left a mark somewhere.
And of course, now I think there's about 8 beach huts that hire out.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, and they all offer something completely different. So I think one's like a surf shack, one's linked with Margot's Lounge, so it's all a bit the good life, very retro.
Yeah.
Happy Days is all bright and cheerful.
One of the guys who's quite, I think he's Norwich way, bless him, he does a lot of mental health wise, and he's on a lot of groups. He's got a beach hut down there. Is it Ian? And then
You've got 70 down there, so
is
I
that
don't,
right? You wouldn't know,
so I don't.
But the one that really sticks out to me, I'll be honest with you, which I think is my type of sense of humour, and I don't know who owns it, and I've never seen inside, but is Jabba the Hutt.
I knew you were going to say that. I bet he's going to say Jabba the Hutt. Yeah.
When I first saw that, I thought,
think there's a couple of ladies, and yeah, they've got a good sense of humour. We get a lot of people down, like, so yesterday I got corrected that wild swimming is naked, and I didn't know that. I thought wild swimming was actually like you just go out into the sea. You go out into the sea, but all year round.
Yep.
You're not kind of fair weather.
Yep.
And last year, an organisation of ladies, self-formed, approached me and said, could we, have the huts for...
naked swimming.
Yeah, or not naked, but like they're in their cozies. So I said, yes, no problem. And they said, oh, we're actually doing a calendar, like Calendar Girls.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I said, oh, really? They said, yeah, but we're doing it, obviously, with the beach as our theme.
Yeah.
And when she told me that they were doing it for Marie Curie, well, they were the saviours in my world that would give Tim and I some time, and they'd do a night sit for my mum, and they used to arrive about 10. So about 9 o'clock, because we had our motorhome next to Mum's bungalow, and Tim used to stay in there sometimes. So I'd leave about 9, knowing that Mum just had that hour, and then they would spend the evening. And to be fair to her, she was really good at night, but it was more about gifting me that time
to relax,
downtime.
Yeah.
So when she said Marie Curie, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to get involved. So then we got the huts, and I did some hot chocolate for everyone with squirted cream and marshmallow, and actually joined in. So I am in that calendar.
Oh yeah. We've spoke. We're doing a walk talk calendar, but
are you?
Yeah, we're not at that point yet. Yeah, we're not at that point yet, but maybe in the future. Yeah, the guys over at who support the Lowestoft walk and talk, Dean's Beans.
Okay.
They done a calendar last year, and that was very similar. That was by the beach.
Yeah.
And it was all guys, a couple of guys from Walk Talk Suffolk got involved, and are very similar. Do you know what I mean? In that sort of risque but quite comical.
Yes, I mean, it was, it was fun. Yes, definitely. And I didn't expect to, and I haven't seen sort of like the
Finished
like
out.
the entire. No, I haven't seen the entire. Like lots because we did some in the huts as well, and it was all very strategic.
Yeah.
And then I was quite brave because I'd had breast cancer and I'd had the mastectomy. They were like, "Oh, this is really good," because although I was strategic, there was obviously a hint of the fact, that I just had the one boobie, and it's so fantastic when you inadvertently, raise awareness, you guys do, and you think, oh my gosh, there's another, string to our bow that you don't necessarily think of when you're starting out.
Yeah.
So
no, definitely. Yeah.
So we also do Wellbeing Wednesday, which today it's on my list of posts that I've got to do. So on a Wednesday we share the beach huts for free, and it's for anyone that's perhaps going through a hard time, just need that
little break,
tonic.
Yeah.
You can bring someone if you want to, have a couple of hot chocolates or a cup of coffee, and just I suppose.
Do you host that?
Unplug. No. Well, I have hosted some when somebody's come and they've been similar to your group in the respect that they just wanted some company.
Yep.
And so I tend to be in Bertie, and then and that was when we didn't have like the key code, the key safe thing. But now it's a bit more autonomous, where people can go and open up and be more independent in their hire. So, but I still feel that. It's nice. I like to host. I like to set up. I like to.
You're a good host as well. I'll be honest with you. Like, I think people have their own place in life, and you're a bit like me, a people person.
Yeah.
And sometimes you gotta let people do what they're born to do as such. And I think a lot of people. That's the whole ethos of why I started the group, is because I can talk to people, I can interact with people. And it doesn't matter what background you come from.
You're at home, aren't you?
I'm at home doing
this
that.
This is your best self.
Yeah. But I'm also aware there's a lot of people out there who not can't communicate, but they don't really know how to, or they've never been shown how to, or they're a little bit anxious, or they've got things going on. But those people, when they're in a group, are the ones that actually really shine and pull forward. And then the next time, we have guys, obviously you see in our group, it's getting to the point. It's really hard when people stop us and say, "So what are you all doing?" We go, we're a men's mental health support group, because they think, well, you look like a bunch of lads out having a jolly, and really, we are. Do you know what I mean? Because all the guys have come now so many weeks and just pick each other up, and you can, it's beautiful to see someone talking to a new guy who's joined us, who might be a bit down and a bit low and have some problems. But you think the guy talking to you was you 6 months ago. Do you know what I mean? And he's bounced off another
growth, isn't it?
That growth and that ripple effect in the pond.
You've always had that vibe, though. Even can you remember when there was just you three?
Yeah.
When you started out, and you've always had that vibe, and sometimes like when you've come past the huts and that, and I can see those people that are new, hands in their pockets and their shoulders a little bit closed in, and their body language is like, I'm kind of one of the new guys, and then you've got the ones that have been doing it for ages, like Liam, and I don't know their names and stuff, but I can pick them out in an ID parade.
Right, that's right. I know them from somewhere.
But and they're just comfortable, and but then it's what the relationships that you build up, isn't it? And I think I think I know you don't take credit for it, and I know that for you it was just a natural need. It wasn't a business niche or anything like that.
No.
There was something, and you wanted to do it, and you were the perfect person to do it, because obviously the success of it, but it's because you're attracting the right people in your world. Don't want to be all woo woo and universe and stars aligned and everything, but there is there is substance to that, isn't there?
There is,
that you are and there's somewhere to go to now. Somewhere. I mean, I spoke to somebody on Saturday, and I look after their little dog, their little cockapoo, and they're a lovely couple, and they've been guests at the beach hut, and that's how I met them. And then I looked after their little cockapoo, and they came to our to our house and had at the bungalow, and we had coffee outside and stuff. And then I saw them on Saturday, and it was just by chance. I saw little Teddy, and I was like, "Oh, you're coming for a holiday with me next week." He's a dear little thing. And then I was talking to the male, and he was telling me that he lost his best friend this week, and he took his own life, and he was just, you could see, even though he was, here, his head was spinning round and round, like he said, "Oh, I tried. And you've got that kind of predictable dialogue of a best friend that was pushed, or, buffed off. And he's like, "Why didn't I see that?" and everything. And I just said to him, there are some people that don't want to be helped.
Yeah.
But actually...
Unfortunately, and, it's probably not politically correct to say it, but I've always been aware, and I say to the guys, generally, I'd like to help every single person, but the truth be told, not everyone, unfortunately, can be saved. No. And I don't think we'll ever really know why. No. But it doesn't stop you trying, but it also must mean that if, unfortunately, something like that does happen, even if it's your best friend, deep down, I think everyone will take a bit of maybe guilt from that and think, oh, maybe I could have done more, I could have done this.
Well, the questions just must be endless, mustn't they?
Yeah, but for me, the bottom line is, and again, I mean, it's with great respect to anyone, we can help everyone, but everyone has to take part in their own recovery and their own reason to be here.
You've got to want to be helped.
You've got to want to be helped, because in anything, not just life, but if you want to lose weight, we've got a gym club that goes twice a week. You can come to the gym and lose weight, but I can't lift the weights for you. I can tell you and I can advise you, but you've still got to put in some work. You've got to show up in your own world. You've got to show up in your own world, and that's and I'm not trying to make light of the situation by any means.
No. But it's a reality, isn't it? It's a reality that we're however hard life can be, and we don't want to get out of bed sometimes. The days we do, we're better for it.
Oh, 100% better. Yeah. So,
100% better. So I know what you mean. But when I think about, I mean, he lives in Dis, but they come, to Gorton quite a lot, and it's just really nice to know that there is help out there.
There is,
and we've got your mugs in our huts.
Yep.
Tim loves that mug because I think it's like,
the perfect
I think
size.
We're all a mug snob, aren't we?
Yeah.
I like bone china.
Yeah.
But and we've got these quite fancy ones in the hut. But he likes that because it's like a proper mug, and the surface area isn't as big, so therefore he gets to enjoy his coffee for just that tiny bit longer.
Yeah.
So So he loves his walk and talk.
Yeah, I'll have to get you. We got obviously the walk and talk ones, but we have actually got as well some Walkie Talkie podcast ones. So
oh, okay.
I'll have to sort you a couple of them out as well,
okay.
But, on that note, I think one of the other things I wanted to briefly discuss was actually, and I don't know what sort of banner to put it under, but...
you don't have to put it on a banner, do you?
But it's obviously your relationship with your son, and I know we've spoke before about it, and I've met your son, a lovely chap, and I know he's going to hopefully come on, and it's quite interesting and exciting for me to have the son and the parents' view on the subject. So... to obviously anyone who doesn't know, just run us briefly through the sort of backstory of, I suppose, Zan's story.
So Zan is 29. He was born in the UK and started his life in Saudi Arabia. So when he celebrated his first birthday, it was an ice cream cake in just Pampers in a high chair, and we had a pool party, and it was my 30th. So we lived there for a couple of years, and then the marriage broke down. So he spent a long time being kind of the receiving end of promises that didn't materialise. I don't want to say the proverbial absent father, because it's a sweeping generalisation, but unfortunately...
The facts don't lie.
No, but unfortunately, in this particular case, his biological father, who we actually call sperm donor now, but we don't speak about him very often, so the term doesn't really get used. Although we did talk about it yesterday, funnily enough. So he was let down, and his biological father was very narcissistic. So really, he only had himself as a priority. So he went through, I suppose, his childhood up until he was about 13. He's having quite an erratic relationship and contact with his dad. And it was a bit of a nightmare for me. But I always, I suppose I parented like two people. He calls me Mad, which is mum and dad.
Yeah.
So he calls me Mad, and everyone's like, you let your son call you Mad? But, obviously it's a term of endearment. And when he was about, I think he was just entering his GCSEs, and he decided that he didn't want him in his life. He didn't want that emotional roller coaster, and he needed to focus. He wasn't particularly academic, very sporty actually, and can basically sort of turn his feet and hands to any sport. He was just very agile and
athletic.
Athletic. So from say 13, 14, his academic targets were quite low. They weren't even a C pass in some areas. So I was very proactive. So the 2 years that I did my teacher training, I'd already got my degree in psychology. We spent every Sunday to Thursday, 6 till 9, at the dining table, and I would like tutor him with all the subjects, the English literature that a young athletic boy you wouldn't get him to sit down. Yeah. He was training actually at the time for England roller hockey team, so I would bargain with him when he used to have his training camps in Peterborough, and we'd have to stay over, and I'd say to him, well, if you can talk to me about mice and men like you can describe what happened in EastEnders last night, then I know you know it. You know the characters. So we would do that down the A47. So although I was probably soft in many ways, a bit like we were talking earlier, in other ways it was like, well, there's the carrot. And So I was peddling, I suppose, pretty hard as a parent, because, that was to me the right thing to do. I remember taking him to Australia for the summer, and we had great experiences, and I never wanted to be defined as a single parent, and I never wanted that to be like a sort of perspex ceiling to our, what we could achieve. So I suppose in some ways, a bit like when we were talking about ADHD, I made single parenting look easy and glamorous, but it was far from that. Yeah. Inside, which, I'm sure you identify with. Yep. So Zand was, he did really well. He got 12 GCSEs, and then I got breast cancer, and that was obviously I was his rock, and when I went into hospital each time I had chemo, it was a sort of 48-hour thing. My temperature would spike after the chemo treatment, and I'd go into ward 17, and then you'd isolate. And so, that was a really difficult time for him. He started at East Norfolk sixth form, and he was doing he was doing well with his sports science qualification. But then the college contacted me and said, 1 minute I'm getting A star, the next minute it's like, whose work is this? So there was that, I suppose, his academia played out in what was happening to him emotionally, So anyway, next thing I know, he came to see me in hospital, and he said, I've just enrolled, I've been to Lowestoft College, so he'd done all this on his own, been to Lowestoft College, and I've just signed up to be an engineer. And I was like, oh, wow, great. And my late brother was an engineer, and it was a natural progression. So he did that, but unfortunately, when he graduated, the oil and gas was not, it didn't have a future, but renewables did. And I just said to him, you're single, you've got no commitment. If you're going to retrain and do renewables, this is the time to do it. So he did that. And then started a very successful career on the wind turbines as an engineer, which were, scarily well paid, and he was doing really well. And I knew that he was a party boy, and I knew that he liked to go out, and I knew that sometimes he would. I would, as a parent, I used to worry. I used to think, oh my God, he's going to be the one that falls from the roof or from the balcony. Right, yeah. He's going to be the one, found in the bottom of a river, or, because unfortunately he did share some traits of his biological father.
Yep.
And and so whilst I'm navigating perhaps the last 10 years of recovering from breast cancer myself, running my own cake business, then my mum having a brain tumour, then my stepfather left and I basically put his slippers on and carried on and lived with her because she couldn't be on her own. Then Mark had his motorcycle accident. I remember one time, because he had a heart attack not long after he had the amputation, and they wouldn't let him out of hospital unless he had somewhere to go, and he was in his wheelchair. And so there was my mum in her wheelchair and my brother in his, and I was Cinderella. And because that's what it took to get him out of hospital.
Yeah.
So you can imagine that I was just absolutely working on the red. At this time,
yeah, I can imagine,
Bertie and Betty were, I don't know how I found the energy to set them up, but I did. And then we lost Mark the following year, and Mark was very significant to his aunt in that he was like his dad.
Yeah.
His male role model. And he did, when he was young, he did say to me, "Can you be my dad?" And he said, "But I can't, because I'm your uncle, and that's my role in your life." He said,
yeah.
And so they renamed him Funkle.
Yeah, father,
which was
uncle, yeah.
father and uncle. And obviously, they spent a lot of time together, and he, when Mark used to travel around the world with his job engineering, when the day was like this, he'd be out on his motorbike, and then it'd be like, "Are you cooking a roastie?" And then he'd come, like literally as I was dishing up, and we'd eat together, and I'd say, "Go on, I know you're itching to get back out there,"
yeah.
while we've still got daylight, and, we'd hear the roar of that. So it was turbulent, and I didn't see that the partying was any more than the partying. And we had COVID, and there were certain things that I look back on and I think, oh yeah, that kind of, I get that now.
I didn't pick up one at the time.
No. I remember one time Tim's family all live in sort of Cambridgeshire and Suffolk, and we all went to Go Ape, and I got him a ticket to go through, and he decided he wasn't going to come. And I was upset, but I ended up doing it myself. I don't know how I climbed up that rope thing, but I did. And actually, Tim's ex-wife, the kid's mum, said, "Oh my God, she's really gutsy." And I just, what else could I do? I just had to climb up this rope ladder. So there was things like that. So then I had broken my ankle, and Bertie and Betty were like, it was sort of like our first season. I couldn't get down to the hut, so I was sleeping downstairs. Tim had bought me a commode, and I can remember him coming to me Monday. He'd let me down because I had lots of Valentine's orders, and he said he didn't feel well, and he was staying in bed, and I had to get I put a shout out on my page, "Can someone help me with a delivery to Caister?" And I can remember, that sort of hit me hard, and I thought, I'm not going to lose it today, but tomorrow I'm going to
pull him on it,
give you the cold facts, and like you say, pull him on it. Anyway, we didn't get to that conversation. Whether is, I don't know, guilt or something that day, he came to me and he sat on, because we had a sofa bed, and obviously with my broken ankle, and he said to me, "Mum, I'm in trouble." And I said, "What sort of trouble?" And he said, "Cocaine." And I said, "Right." I said, "Can you tell me more?" He said, "I've wanted to stop, and I've tried to stop, and I can't." He said, "And I need your help." And then he collapsed. So we had to phone 999, but I didn't, because I didn't know if he'd taken it or if he'd collapsed because it was the relief. And when the paramedics came, that was like, "Oh, cocaine." You know, they were just like, it was like
Another day.
And I was just on. I mean, you can imagine where I was. I was all over the place. Tim had the presence of mind to say, "Are you in trouble with anyone? Is anyone going to be banging on the door?" Because he's ex-police, and obviously he knows, you know, that world. And he said, no. And that was the beginning of, that was day one of him getting clean and sober. And he had a couple of lapses, and I think the lapses were more painful because you feel like you're moving forward. And sadly, one of the lapses involved someone I knew well, and they did it with him. And I never would have thought
that person would have.
That would have, because he went to them like as a haven.
Yeah.
Like a clean haven. And then, you know, but then
that must have been hard. Definitely, because
I've never broken my silence on that of, like, you know, speak. I just, you know, and Zan said to me, "Don't ever say anything," and I was like, "No, I won't," because the damage, you know, the kind of knock-on effect.
Yeah, of course.
Is, and thankfully, I mean, I can remember a bit like, you know, the sister was at the James Paget that didn't, you know, win favour with everybody. I was the same with Zand. You know, I looked at rehab centres. It's when you hit a crisis point that you realise, like, where the help is, and God where it's not, and
who's there for you and who's
exactly,
not.
And the, you know, the restrictions in services and the criteria you have to meet as well. You know, it's like, well, you know, like, we don't quite, you know, or there's
quite meet the
there's a threshold, you know,
if
and
you
you're
get
like,
worse, we can help you. Like,
exactly,
what?
I know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm pleased to say that he is now 3 years clean and sober. It's been an incredible journey, exhausting. This is the most well I have felt mentally probably since before I got breast cancer, and that's 13 years ago. And it's because of all the things that have happened in my life and how I've tried to deal with them. And I don't think, hand on heart, that he will swap the life that he's got now. He's become, so he was in a lovely relationship, and I think they healed each other. She didn't, you know, use substance or anything like that, but she had her own demons, and the two of them kind of worked through them. And she had a little boy who was 8, and Zand brought a lot to his world because he was giving her son all what he thought he missed out on.
I was going to say,
And I was really proud of him. I didn't see it coming, and I was just like, and, you know, and his girlfriend at the time was you know, like, just wonderful. She was daughter-in-law material, you know. I loved them all. But then he came to me 2 years on, and he said to me, "Mum, how long does it take to get a bond with somebody?" And I said, "Well, I think if you're asking the question, I think you know the answer." So, so then he sort of, like, you know, and I said, well, and then he referred to the little boy, and and then he sort of spoke about how different they were, that he was a gamer, he wasn't athletic, and that actually, genetically they didn't have anything in common.
Yep.
And then he started to open up that he needed to be single and clean and sober, and he needed to find out who he was.
Yeah.
That he'd repaired some of his self, but not all of it. And I just said to him, whatever you choose to do, think, be brave, damage limitation, I'll support you. So we left. At the time, Tim and I had moved into my mum's because she was end of life, and we'd rented our place out. So all the goods in our home went into their home when they set up. And because I'd been a single parent and he was a child of a single parent, he walked away and we left them set up. Yeah. We let them have everything because for us that was the right thing to do. And they continued to be friends. They were kind of like had this cousin-like relationship.
Yeah.
And he was working on the wind turbines, and then last September he bought a racing bike and he did a triathlon in Bungay, and we went to go and see him, and swimming was his weakest discipline. He'd always been good at running and the athletic side, but had no technique in the pool. And I can remember going, and I went to the pool, and he just steadily, even though his personality was very ADHD, he was really calm in the pool. And I was like, oh my goodness me. And Tim was outside with our little dachshund, and then he came round and obviously got his trainers on and went on the bike, and then they came back, and then he did the run, and his splits, so the three figures for each discipline were incredible, and he was the first out of all the runners. So we then started to see the magic that had always been in him from a little boy that he perhaps didn't value or chose not to see.
Yeah, or didn't see the joy in it as such,
Exactly. And people were talking about him, and of course, that sort of, that adulation that he'd sought in the wrong areas with the wrong people and being the wrong person. It wasn't, like you say, you got to be in your own world.
Again, from the outside looking in, and I obviously don't know Zan very well, but straight away that strikes me as, and that's not an excuse, but especially from the substance side, sometimes a lot of people, believe that when they take substance and they've got a lot of friends and they're in that party and you're appreciated, well, a lot that can easily stem from feeling, from previous that someone's left you that really shouldn't have, and what did you not that you've done anything wrong, but you're looking for that acceptance.
Belonging was huge.
So that pushes people that way. Whereas, and I try to instill to all the guys on the walk, just be yourself. And honestly, the people who walk out of your life
don't belong there.
Don't belong there. Like I see a clip, and I use it all the time. Some speaker in America said it, and he said, generally people are like boosters on a rocket. That don't make them bad people, but they get to a certain point, and they have to release for you to carry on your journey. And sometimes
that's a great analogy.
You don't want that to happen, but that's just how it's meant to happen. And once you accept that in life, you get on so much better, and you can see straight away now that he's found his place, and he's kind of found his people in that world.
Well,
do you know what I mean?
So all of a sudden, like you say, his fire was shining bright in his gut, and he was talking to the right people, and the right conversations were happening, and he spoke to his best friend, and then the next thing I know, he said to me, I'm going to go to Spain for 3 months. And I said, oh, are you? He'd finished on the wind turbines for the summer. And he said, yes. He said, my friend's family's got a luxury apartment in the south of Spain, and they said that I can look after the apartment for 3 months, and I just need to pay the utilities. And I was just like, oh wow,
Super.
So he drove out. So he booked a ferry. He took his bike and everything else that he needed, and he just trained and trained. He got a swimming coach, a Russian lady, apparently very beautiful. That was just a bonus, I think.
Yeah.
And I never met her.
Yet.
No, well, I think, you know the saying, reason, season, lifetime.
Yeah.
We come into our people's lives for a reason or a season.
Yep.
Or,
Lifetime.
like you say, the lifetime.
Yep.
So him and I always say, you know, reason, season, lifetime. And then it just kind of like puts that in a box.
Yeah.
And he interviewed many coaches, you know, triathlon coaches, and although some had, like, you know, all bells and whistles, this guy he connected with. And the funny thing was, he was also, this guy Tony was also coaching another guy similar age to Zand in the same place in Spain.
Oh, okay.
So the three of them then started to connect, and he was just, he became an athlete, and, you know, like nutrition, everything. And he'd tell me all these statistics and stuff, and, you know, my head's buzzing, and I'm like, yes, darling, yes, you know, really taking an interest in everything. But he was, you know, he was on his journey, and then decided that he was going to enter the Ironman. And his coach had done the Ironman before, and I think this other athlete had. So they booked to do Valencia on the 27th of April coming up, and he was on target. He, you know, his splits were really good, and then we went out in December, and he had this beautiful apartment and the huge patio. It was like the size of this room.
Yep.
And he had his bike out there, and he had his, you know, his iPad, and like almost like Peloton, like.
Yeah.
And I can remember him saying to me, well, when you come out, I'll be able to have one day off, but then the other days I've got, and I just thought, my God, you're prioritizing yourself now. You're not selling your soul to anyone. You're not people pleasing. No. You're not looking, you know, you haven't abandoned your schedule because we've come out.
Yeah.
And I was just like, there was just, you know, this structure to, and the robustness and resilience that I'd not seen in him before, because he'd, like you say, he'd been searching for that sense of belonging. And I remember coming away thinking, oh my goodness. And we'd promised each other that because he was in such a good place and he wasn't due back to the UK until the 10th of January, and we were due to go on a cruise the beginning of January, that because we'd gone out to see him, we had like a Christmas meal together, that we wouldn't surprise each other. Bearing in mind we're both the same birthday and we are similar creatures. And then he broke that promise and turned up Christmas Eve, and still did some training. And then the next thing I know, he said, Tony and Brad and I are going to do Ironman in Muscat in Oman in February. And I said, oh, right, okay. So to me, that was a real sort of clear signal that he was making progress, that he was able to enter into this world sort of 2 months earlier. So the three of them went out, and he had to borrow a bike because he'd bought a bike from Canon, and they messed him about something chronic. And these bikes are like 12,000.
Yeah. Professional bit of
so you expect a little bit of aftercare.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
Good service.
So he borrowed a bike, and they flew out. You know, they have these bike boxes, and they flew out to Oman, and we were on our cruise, but we had internet. No, we'd come back at this point. And I can remember being in bed, and I went on Ironman, and you've got a tracker, and you put their number in, and then it shows you. And I just remember to use it, and he crossed the line. And because there was no FaceTime in Oman, because the country doesn't allow it, we weren't allowed to, like, obviously enjoy the moment. And he'd been out there for a few days, and I knew I just needed to let him be in that world, and you know, I'd get the story when the time was right. And because up until then, I suppose we've always been, you know, like
celebrating
just
together.
and
moments,
exactly, been in the moment.
Yeah.
And then when we got to speak to him, and he said that he had a terrible swim, and he went off too far, so they had to come back in, and his breathing wasn't right, and then he said that he got the transition was too long. It was 4 minutes from swim to bike. And then when he was on his bike, he hit like a sleeping policeman, and his 2 bottles went. So that was all his nutrition for the rest of the race. Oh. So he didn't have that. So obviously no fuel. And then he had problems with his Garmin watch and the computer. And so he didn't even know where he was in his race. So he was literally doing that race blind, bearing in mind that it spent 4 months
preparing
and knowing all the tools, and you know, using all those markers to get you through to the next bit. So then and then he came to do the run, and he said that the run was like 3 loops of one circuit, and they flew out. And this sounds very grand. I think it's just today's society where we're at. But they flew out a videographer, and he's got fantastic footage of him during the race, like going into the water, coming out, and high-fiving his coach, because his coach was ahead of him. Rightly so. He's older. He's more experienced.
Yeah. And
it was, you know, expected. But there's a lovely bit of footage where they high five, where you know Tony's coming this way, and apparently the dialogue was, "You shouldn't be, you know, like
high five.
You shouldn't be doing this. You should be further back. What's going on?"
Yeah.
Anyway, he was absolutely spent, and there's footage of him, you know, literally collapsing in a, you know, electing, not literally, when he crossed the line, and he said he just cried once he hit that red, I think it's like a foamy carpet.
Yeah.
He said once my first foot got on that red carpet, he said, "Mum," he said, "I just absolutely blubbed, you know, like the full
everything come out of him.
Unapologetic. I don't care who's watching. This is raw emotion." And he said it wasn't just the race.
Yeah.
It was his journey, his life's journey, from as far back as he could remember, and he
found his place.
He's found his people, and when he's walked away from his relationship, the key thing, and he was really honest, and I was so proud of him that, you know, he said to me, he said, "I know guys," he said, "who could, you know, they do the crossover because they're lazy, because they don't want to be a gentleman, basically." He said, "I don't want to be like that." And he said, "I want to see the world." Well, he knew he wanted to see the world because I'd kind of nurtured that in him. And I said to him, you know, yes, we could upgrade our car, or we could have our hall painted, but actually, should we get another stamp in the passport? So that was his childhood, and that was, you know, what he loved. But he didn't know. It was like a bit empty. He knew he wanted to see the world, but it's like, well, what do I do? Just kind of like,
what's
just
my
fly
purpose?
To a place? Exactly, the purpose. And then he came back and he said, "I found my purpose," he said, and the championships, the qualifiers are in Utah in America next year, and he came 56th out of 1,100 participants, and
that's impressive.
It has got people talking, and his sights are high, I think he'd like to be a professional athlete. He's found his magic, and he's put his magic in the right place with the right people. He's found his tribe. Yesterday, he went out. I've been told off. I can't say bike ride anymore because 120 kilometres is not a bike ride, apparently. Especially when they're averaging 45 kilometres an hour.
Blimey, yeah. What do they call it then?
Well, I don't know, ride out or whatever, you know. But it's like, you know, if someone says, "Oh, where's that?" I can't say, "Oh, he's gone on a bike ride." You know, it's just not a bike ride anymore. So, and he's just he met this girl when he was a man, and he joked and he said, "Oh, the chance," he said, because he wasn't. That's the last thing he was thinking about, because he doesn't want any distractions. And he said, "Oh, knowing me, I'll probably meet someone in a funny swimming cap at the beginning of the line." And it turned out that she was poorly, so she couldn't do the race. And she's very successful. I think she's got sponsors. She's been on the podium. And those two have just really clicked. And she lives in Scotland. And they're both so focused that they've now got to navigate.
Yeah. Trying to make it work.
Where does it fit? Does it fit? Do we go fast? Do we go slow?
Yeah.
How is our friendship gonna work? And so for him, I think to be with somebody like-minded that is not. He knew that he didn't want, to meet a local girl and settle down and have children, because he would have done that, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
And who knows, what's going to happen here. But he's also, because so when he left Spain, he said that he wanted a visa and he wanted to live there. Well, and this is kind of, when you look at the progress that your guys make from being in your group and the walking and the talking, and not necessarily realising how far they've come until some, like a milestone will happen, or a conversation will happen, and you think, oh my goodness. And then he came to realise that actually didn't want a visa for Spain, because there's a big world out there.
Yeah,
and so now he's got, visions. Tony and himself and Brad are looking to go to Thailand next year. Well, it'll be this year, after he does the wind turbines till October. And apparently there's an Ironman hotel that has been built especially for like the swim, the cycle, the run.
Superb, yeah.
And so they're going to have some fun in Thailand first, relax and then I just said to him, you're 30 in May. You've got yourself, I wouldn't say on track, but you've got yourself in a good place. Some people go to their grave and never know.
And try all their life and don't get, like I say, unfortunately, not everyone can. But
yeah,
it's funny, because reiterating back to what we said earlier in the podcast, and what I said is, as much as you can see, and I'm sure when I get my time to speak to him, he'll say this, but I automatically, even just from your description, get the impression that as much as he's got good parents behind him, in you and Tim, as much as he's got, obviously a good trainer and someone else training with him, he still had to do the work himself. Do you know what I mean? He still had to lift them weights, and he
absolutely.
No one can ride the 120 kilometres or whatever for you. He still had to do it, and just look at the results from putting that massive effort in with support from everyone else. Yeah. I'm also a firm believer in it's very hard to try and do something like that on your own without any support. But from that moment of him breaking down to you, and if I'm honest, from you not, and plenty of people have been in this situation, and it hasn't just got to be substance abuse, it can be, gambling, alcohol abuse,
anything that's playing havoc with your world.
And if you open up again to someone, even if it's as close as a direct parent, plenty of people have turned their backs on people. Well, that's not the answer either, because you do need the help from others, and you need the support from others. But if you put the work in, and with the right support, it just shows you what you can achieve. And it's amazing.
It is incredible. And I think, he's always, from a little boy, I've always, he could kick a football, just as he started walking. Yeah. And and he had these like well-defined little Mark Hughes legs,
Yeah.
muscles, and funnily enough, I saw his football coach. And when I was doing my degree, I used to say to him, "Oh, I don't know if I can get him there this week. Oh, I've got to have him." He said, "Send him with a packed lunch." He said, "I'll come and get him." And he was like his football dad, and just really nurtured him.
Yeah.
So it is about finding your people along the way, and being, obviously he was a child, and his football coach was one of the good guys. There are coaches out there that are not, because we've also met them as well.
Yeah.
But it's about learning, and I think now, it is a little bit about the universe and the stars aligning. And why is this now easy?
Yeah.
It's not easy to, like his legs were screaming in the afternoon. We had dinner, and he said, "Oh, Mum," and I said, "Oh." And he said, "I probably shouldn't have done that hour and a half run the day before." And I said, "Well, no, but you're learning, And I mean, obviously, the lengths that he's going to, but he now wants to have an exit strategy from his profession, because he wants to do it full time. And I just said to him, "You're 30. What does it matter if you don't have children? What does it matter if you meet someone at 40 and have children? Don't live that, don't put those expectations on yourself, because I've never had them. I did from the minute you were born, really. Life was not a stereotypical path for us.
Yeah.
You were, he wasn't born in Saudi Arabia, but we flew out, and he was 6 weeks. It was 6 weeks, and he was on a, on a 6-hour flight, and learning to not cry, and and we've never done things, I suppose, kind of mainstream, and he's found his own lane now and his own people, and the happiness that I get from hearing him on the phone talking to someone like yesterday about the race, and
how much enjoyment he gets out of it, but how much enjoyment you get seeing him happy,
hearing it,
and
how that has now, it's not just the activity, it's, see, like my tummy is burning because it's a fullness. It's not a flip of anxiety and panic, wondering if he's alive or dead, because he partied too hard.
Yeah.
No.
With the wrong people, or
Yesterday, he's talking, and he's always seems to there always seems to be somebody, or he's on his phone and he's getting inspiration from a podcast or whatever. And there's just such a positive vibe, and I know that I am so blessed and lucky to have not just him on the earth, alive and well, but that he's at home at the moment, living with us. So I get to see, so he does annoying things as well, like, doesn't help sometimes. I said to him, "You need to help more. Like, you need to unload the dishwasher or whatever."
Children.
Yeah,
anyway.
exactly. Like you can't just have the mum and me and then not, and then retract back to the child.
Yeah.
But I think, that what your group gives is that look forward, isn't it? It's that, I can tell so-and-so that's happened to me. And the little wins that are massive, because life is hard for everyone.
Yeah, so you've got to grab the positivities. And they got to be celebrated.
But if you can't celebrate them, then they don't hold any worth, do they?
No, none.
And, it's so, and now, I mean, there's such a vibe on your page, isn't there? And there's, like you say, events coming up this month. There's so many things to get involved that you're beyond walk and talk now, aren't you?
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, that's quite, from my point of view, and whether it's imposter syndrome or what, and you're right, like you said earlier, I very rarely take credit, but one thing I am quite proud of with the group is, even though it was, just over 2 years has been going, I can still see that's kind of like a movement in that, you know, that will far outlive, hopefully, me or anyone who's on the group now. You know, that will continue and continue. And eventually there will be someone, you know, well, how did this all start? And someone will say, oh, this chap, Mark, blah, 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 met another chap, and they got together and they thought they'd, you know, meet up and go for a walk, and then look at the all the things that have been done. So even now I'm quite conscious of, when I go through my phone, I think, oh, I've got to make a video, or I've got to make, you know, some promotional material. But my phone is absolutely flooded with, you know, positive moments from the group, and seeing, you know, without going into too much detail, I know I can go through my phone and I'll have photos that will never get shared and nobody else will ever see, that people have sent me when they've been at their absolute lowest. And then I have got pictures where I know I don't even have to ask their permission to share, because when you go, oh, right lads, we're taking a picture, they're front and foremost, right in amongst it, and positive and smiling, to see that change in people. And that's a collective, that's from the whole group, you know, from doing what they do. Yeah, that is quite a nice feeling. Yeah, definitely.
When you were talking then, and I was thinking, you know, you used the word movement, and I think about, you know, for me, I think of, like, I studied social and economic history as part of my access degree to get into university, and I never thought, you know, I went to grammar school. I didn't find school easy. I think I got 1 O level, and that was French. And that's probably because there was an oral part and I could talk.
Yeah.
But when I think about, and I think about my learnings and the suffragettes and what they were almost blindly passionate, and, you know, and the life that was lost to get that voice out there and be heard. And I like to think, and you just said exactly that our young people will grow up, you know, like in the schools now, and there is somewhere to go.
Yeah.
So you might not meet them now.
No.
But you're on the landscape. You're, like we were talking about, the Just Eat, you know, area. You're on the map. And it's like that movement will always be there now. And they will reach, and I'm sure perhaps you've had conversations like, you know, and not prematurely. Well, what did we do before the group?
Yeah.
Or where did people go? Or what did we do? And I know we had COVID and everybody was struggling, but when you think how enriched your lives all are, and
from each other's,
and those that look in, you
know,
I'm female, and, you know, I've got a son, and he's had his vulnerabilities, and he may have a son, or, you know, and there may be those traits, and he's maybe have to deal with those as a parent. But to know
there's
somewhere, you know, if he was to dip, if he was to doubt, and the fact that at the moment, you know, he's doing great, and he wants to come onto the podcast and share that, his story
to help the next.
He's a fantastic orator, and I know that at the moment, you know, in his triathlon journey, he probably wouldn't feel. I know he'd like to coach. I know he'd like to give back, but obviously he's still in the early part of his success and his journey. But I also know that he wants to be a professional athlete that has overcome adversity, and he's met so many that, you know, because he hasn't taken the, you know, being scouted at a young age and nurtured. And almost this clinical route of, you know, athleticism or football or whatever it is. His journey is very different. But this is an area where actually, to some degree, it's about your physical fitness and not your age.
Yeah.
You know, they have categories, and some, I think the categories in at the moment is, you know, very, very competitive. But
As time goes on,
this will be a huge part, and
of his life.
I think he's enjoying being talked about. I mean, from that, you know, that day in Bungay, people were like, "Well, who's that? Alex Davis? Who's he? Is he new on the set?"
Yeah.
He's now getting that buzz, that adulation that perhaps, you know, he looked for in something else. That,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, that acceptance and that to be celebrated. Yeah, no, fantastic.
And also, I think it's important to sort of recognise that, you know, drug taking is like going to the roulette table. You could go, I could go. We could take the same substance.
Yep.
And it could affect us very, very differently.
Yeah.
Some people manage cocaine and it's a lifestyle choice, and he's got friends that do that.
Yep.
And then some people, it manages them.
Yep.
And I think one of the most grim, without sort of ending on a negative, one of the most grim memories I will have as a parent is when he told me, I think we were in lockdown, and part of his bubble, he had this couple, but he didn't go to these two friends. He went to a Premier Inn, and apparently that's quite a common behaviour for that kind of next level of, you know, sort of beyond the social.
Yeah, yeah.
Extending your night into a night and a day because it gives you longevity. So then it's like, actually, I just want to zone out. And then it's like, you know, a bottle of something and the white powder. And like having 2 days and just, you know, like I can't imagine the loneliness and the despair of electing to make that choice. And although he didn't get in bad company and owe money, he did use my card, and so he did steal from me, and it's hard to say because he's my boy, and that was a sum of money that I never, although I printed the bank accounts out, I never actually, and I've still got them, I think, I never tallied it up down to pound and pence. And that account was linked to my mum. And I just said to him, when the time is right and your gran leaves the earth, if you pay for her funeral, that's your debt cleared. And he's done that.
Is that right, yeah?
Yeah. And because to me, it was the moral.
Yeah, definitely.
Closure.
No, I agree with yeah.
And, you know.
But it also kind of signifies, because let's be honest, you know, whatever we've all made mistakes in life. And sometimes, as you know, you can never fully right a wrong, I believe. But you can make it right. Do you know what I mean? You can draw a line, like say, morally and emotionally, you can draw a line and say, and acknowledge, well, whatever I done wasn't right, and I acknowledge that fact, and as a way of apology, you know, this will make us right. Yeah. There's no different to, you know, someone who's committed a crime goes to prison. I'm a firm believer in, if you're given a sentence once you come out of prison, yes,
you've done your time.
You've done your time, you know, and people should respect the fact that you have done your time, even if it's not, you know, but going to put it with something like that shows definitely, you know, he's matured, he's grown up, and he's back on the right path.
I think it's making the where he was at a point where he had no integrity, that his values that I'd instilled in him, you know, all those core things that were taken because of the cocaine.
Yeah.
He was then showing me, you know, I'm going to be man about this. I've got my integrity back. This is the right thing for me to do.
Stand up, be counted,
and you know, and it wasn't anything I could tell my mum. she didn't need to know. And, oh no, she wasn't there. And so that, there are sort of like, I suppose, events that you have to find your way to come to terms with, and I'm sure, your guys, it might be that they meet someone in the group and they're a bit like the opposite to them, and probably they never would have talked to them if it had been a football match or a party or whatever. But
we say that all the time. It's amazing.
The kinship, and what they but what they give each other by perhaps being the calm to the chaos, or the chaos drawing out
the calm,
the personality out of the calm, the ones that hold back, and perhaps their self-worth is questionable. And I know from my son that like his self-esteem was just obviously been annihilated by the absence of that one person that he wanted in his life, and now his self-esteem. And he said, we spoke yesterday, and I said to him, do you think you'll ever kind of a look at having a conversation with your dad? And he said, I haven't ruled it out. And I said, well, that's okay. I said, keep the door ajar.
Keep the door, you don't need to. And in all fairness, I think he hopefully the way he's going, he'll be able to possibly have that conversation. But from the other way around, you never know. He might get seen on the TV, and someone might think to themselves, maybe it's my turn to stand up, be counted, and put a small part of being right back to wrong and reaching out. So let's hope for that. But
it's funny, gosh, you just
nail on the head.
you just sort of said what I had in my mind, that he reaches a height where he can actually, that forgiveness is in him.
Yeah.
But he's got to find the right time to spend it, and it might be that he gets approached by his biological father, and then he's able to say, I forgave you a long time ago, because I can't carry that around with me. I'm busy. I've got kilometers to cycle, and
that could be the final piece to that puzzle.
Well, I think when he comes and
we'll discuss that,
and he spends time with you, it will be lovely for him to tell his story his way.
And I can tell you're both really close.
And tell it in a way that, he's not telling me.
Yeah, exactly
I can remember when I got burgled New Year's Eve, and I used to have victim support come and see me on a Monday night. It was a lady who worked at Midland Bank, and she did that as a volunteer. And I could pour my heart out to her, not in a crying way, but I could tell her my absolute fears in a way that I wouldn't tell my mum and dad, because I didn't want them to worry. And I'm sure you'll probably get, quite maybe a graphic, version, but a graphic raw version of his experience, because he was the one that was living it and speaking to you, and not to me.
The good part of that is the same as this conversation. He'll be able to watch this, but psychologically and in your mind, you're talking, which you are talking to me. Do you know what I mean? You don't.
No.
In a podcast setting, you don't feel like you're talking to 10 million people or anything.
No.
But you'll have opened up probably a lot more, and he will do the same, and it'll be quite, good for you both to see that side. Yeah. So no, I'm looking forward to that.
It's funny because I just remembered one thing. When he was a year clean and sober, we went to the Octopus, which is no longer there now.
It is reopened last week.
Has it?
Yeah, as the Octopus.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
wow, I'm excited about that. Well,
so
anyway, we went there.
Yeah.
Is Ben still running it?
No.
Okay,
Ben's
he's moved on.
He's moved on.
Because he was with partner. He's in partnership with somebody.
Wasn't he? With Mario.
Mario.
So I'm not 100% certain, but I know different owners got it. But at this moment in time, I haven't tried it myself because they opened, I think, this week. But I have seen pictures of the food and I've seen pictures of the menu, and they've done a bit of a revamp inside, even though it was stunning before.
Yeah.
That looks like they've really knocked it out of the park again. So I'm quite keen to try it out myself.
Okay, so when we went for dinner, and then it wasn't long after, I got him and his girlfriend to come back to King Street. But he thought we were going, no, I think he thought we were going to collect some vouchers or something. So we weren't dressed up ready to go there. And I said, I need you to come. And we were parked up down King Street. And I can't give credit to the person because I can't remember his name. But he had shown, I don't know if you remember, but he had done a few images projected from his flat on King Street onto the buildings opposite.
Okay.
And I messaged him and said, would you do a picture of my son? And he said, and I told him his story, and he said yes. Anyway, we got out of the car and we walked towards not the Octopus End, but toward where the Clark's shoe shop used to be.
Yep.
And so we walked.
Greenwood saw.
Yes. So we walked towards there, and I said, "Just look up." And his face was like, because it was like a close up, and he had a beanie hat on and big smile, got gorgeous teeth, and I just said to him, "That is just one representation for me to convey how proud I am."
Oh, lovely.
And he was just blown away that, his face was on
on the wall,
on the shop wall, and there was like obviously all the windows and everything, and there he was, and because how do you quantify that pride? It's so difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, but that sounds like a good way to me.
It was a good way, and I think if he, obviously I've told you about that, and it might be nice if you remember, or if he remembers to mention it, because he.
I'll make a few notes.
He wanted to feel important, I think, in his world, and his father's absence.
Yeah.
Put a big question
on that,
and it sounds stereotypical and proverbial, but
everyone
we all need our parents,
and everyone I think wants to be loved, and everyone wants to be noticed, and everyone wants their not 15 minutes of fame, but they want to know that they've made a change to someone's life.
I think we all want an element of validation, but we have to have that internal validation first. Yeah. Because if you're always looking externally, that validation, you're always going to be at the mercy of, do they like me, don't they like me?
Yeah.
Are they going to reject me, or are they going to embrace me? And are they the right source? Are they the wrong source?
Yeah. I'll end on another analogy I really like is, and that I've used quite a few times, is they always say, if you're on a plane and there's a problem, obviously when the masts drop down, you should always put yours on first. Your instinct is to help your children or your partner or whatever, but you can't help everyone else if you can't breathe yourself. And I find in life, I teach a lot of the guys that as well. The amount of men, especially I've met, who have opened up and said, "I'm just." I've even met one guy, and I'll never forget it, and that must have been 20 years ago now. I remember someone else saying to him, "You're just not nice to anyone. You're just really, always aggressive, and, you hate everyone." And he said, and I'll never forget it, he turned around and he went, "Well, how can you like anyone when you hate yourself?" Oh. And I remember thinking, what a way to be. But he was actually right. And luckily the chap, I still know the chap now, and actually he's a totally different person. If you met him, you'd never think he was that same person. He's like the life and soul of the party. He's really happy, outgoing chap. But that's right. You got to make yourself and be happy with your own self before you can be happy to, make anyone else happy. 100%. But
and what an awful
way to be.
Realisation.
Yeah.
And the fact that he didn't know a different way, and he was living in that prison of, well, I can't be nice to you because actually I'm not even nice to myself. And,
Yeah, horrible situation to be in. But luckily, he's another success story. Not anything to do with me, thankfully. He lives the other side of Norwich, but I didn't see him for about 10 years. And I saw him, and actually he's really, totally... If you're in a shop and you were best friends with him, and he saw you, he'd probably give you a nod, but he wouldn't come over and say hello. Well, he actually, in the middle of a bar, made a beeline towards me to come up and say, hello, mate, how are you? And I was like, but you're not the same person. He said, no, totally changed. And, you could see he's living life again. So another success story. But
That's amazing.
yeah, it's good.
Because self-sabotage
Is real.
Is real, and I'm sure you see it a lot in the groups. And self-sabotage is, in some ways, more powerful than like someone else doing something bad to you or something happening to you, an event, because self-sabotage is with you 24/7, isn't it? It's that self-dialogue that he was keeping himself in that prison.
Yeah.
And the only way we can disrupt that dialogue is to get it out, isn't it? And walk and talk with you guys.
Yeah, definitely. But well, on that note, I think that's probably one of our longest to date podcasts. It went really well. I really appreciate your time.
I've really enjoyed it.
I'm really looking forward to
thank you for asking
having
me.
Zand on and speaking to him now. But one thing we always do before we finish up, how would you word it, Chris? We always like to ask a final thought from our a final thought. Yeah. And because you haven't seen any of our other podcasts, you wouldn't be able to cheat and copy someone else's. But yeah. So we always put people on the spot, and the very last thing is it can be a simple word, it can be a saying, that can be anything you want. But your final thought on just life in general. What's the best way to be?
I think for me, it's our deepest fear. It's the poem. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's not our darkness, but it's our light, and that we, by making our own light shine, we give permission to those around us to shine their lights too. And it's a famous, that's an adaptation, but it's a famous poem from Nelson Mandela's speech, and it's in Coach Carter, a fantastic film to inspire.
I like that film. I watched it again in a few weeks ago.
I can watch it again and again.
Great film, yeah.
And it's about being brave and actually finding how bright can you shine.
Yeah.
And I know that, some of the light bulbs in your walk and talk were broken and
dim. That's what I like to say, yeah.
Yeah, or low wattage.
Yeah.
Tiny. And now, they could probably flood a fairground.
Yeah.
And
straight away, as soon as you said that, it makes me think of Alan. We had one of the guys, Alan, obviously, he done one of our first podcasts, bless him. And I've talked about it many times, but in short, I remember when we first met, and he was really down and looking at the floor, and he didn't really engage with anyone. And we were actually at a breakfast club, one of the first things he came to. And then somebody said a joke, I wasn't involving anyone, just talking out loud, and said a joke. And I just happened to glance down the other end of the table, because he's right at the other end. And I just see this small glimmer of hope, if you like a flicker of him, like a spark, laughing. And I thought, that's where it is. And now, well, when I say life and soul of the party, bless him, I put a thing up the other day saying, right, we're doing Quasar. He's one of the, I'm in. Do you know what I mean? Loves it. Anything we do, he's there. He wants to get involved. He's living the dream. And I'm really proud of Alan. Out of all the guys, there's no competition with the guys, but he's one of the people, the first to put his hand out to a new guy, the first to offer someone a lift. And you think if you saw him in that first moment to where he is now, that's a massive improvement. So, but no, I love that. Yeah,
and it's like you say, it's that. Well, I always remember when I was doing my degree, and they said if you put a seed in in some soil and you put it in a box, and you just pierce one hole, that seed will contort itself
towards the light,
and it'll be twisted, and not well formed, and it probably won't survive very long because of the limitation of the sunlight, and obviously photosynthesis. And many of us put ourselves in relationships that are analogous to that. And it sounds to me like, maybe that was him, and he has now found that actually
he's in the light.
He's in the light all the time, and actually you don't have to be in the darkness, because I think you've given a lot of men a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Hence
and there's still more.
Hence the age-old phrase, there's always light at the end of the tunnel, even if you can't see it.
Yeah.
You just got to keep heading towards where you think it is, and eventually you'll see it. That'll be there.
Yeah, it's keep the faith, isn't it?
Keep the faith, yeah, very true. Yeah, thank you very
Wonderful.
much. Appreciate it.